Democracy in Conversation.
Welcome back to Democracy in Conversation. And I'm so thrilled today. We have Faye Ying, who is the founder and head of an organization called Glocal. And I'll have her explain a little bit more about what it does, but I can tell you that in the engagement that I've had, it has been incredibly inspiring to me. So thrilled to have you on the program, Faye, and maybe start a little bit about what your background, like how you came to a position where you felt that you wanted to work with young people and help them to understand democracy, and what motivated you to do that? Is there something in your childhood or your life experience that made you realize this was important?
Well, thank you, Anita. Thank you for having me. And it's interesting to talk about where I'm coming from. I would say my family immigrated to Canada 21 years ago.
Okay.
So when I arrived, I'm already a university student. So the interesting thing, the first ever course I took in Canada is Poly 101, Introduction to Canadian Politics. And it's the first time I was exposed to this concept about politics is about who gets what, when, and how. So that question stick right in my mind ever since. I'm fascinated by observing, democracy, the institutions, political behaviors. So I'm a key observant. So I actually have a retirement plan already in my mind.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping to get a PhD in political philosophy.
As a retirement plan?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I feel like I have a little bit more time, a little bit more understanding.
So that's quite a ways away.
Yeah. Observations. So after that, I was exposed to second-year course about political philosophy, and later on about comparative. So democracy to me is putting people at the center of the decision making of who gets what, when, and how. So as a political science student, I have a bit of this ideal in my mind, what a democracy look like. And over the years, I'm very passionate about getting people to be seen, be heard. I think this has been a bit of a challenge for young Canadians and newcomers in our country. So that's a very quick story.
Okay, so a challenge for newcomers to engage. Did you try to engage, or have you been involved in politics?
Well, interestingly, the first year I arrived in Canada, I started volunteering for my local MP. That was an eye-opening experience. I started door knocking, phone calling, and also attending town halls, draft speech, for MP. It was a great learning experience for me to get the heart of community service and understanding the realities of the textbooks that I learned from school. That volunteer work lasts all the way to the 2008 federal election. That was definitely another interesting experience. I still remember about 20 years ago, I can get through about 50% of the phone calls I make, but more recent years, I think maybe only 10%. Even with the phone calls I can make through, it wasn't usually a very helpful, phone calls. I just feel like it's also for legislators more and more difficult to reach out to your constituents. We do door knocking. It's not always, we feel safe, right? And when we knock the door. So I gradually realized over the decades that civic participation and reaching out to constituents has been getting more and more costly. We consider affordability issue and accessibility issue in civic participation. And particularly for young Canadians and newcomers, there are the traditional barriers we already know, like language. It's real. Not only English or French, but also the language, the vocabulary, the terms that people use in our democracies, and the social expectations. And with the younger generation, there's also psychological, some of them have mobility concerns, and we are reaching out to a lot of youth nowadays in remote Canada that they don't have the same civic participation opportunity as the youth from metropolitan cities like Toronto. So we believe not only the traditional barriers still exist, but also there's new technical divide, digital literacy, all these adding up. let alone the family responsibilities for newcomers. For them making a living is very important. So the financial opportunity cost is huge. So we're talking about affordability, inclusion, as well as accessibility.
So you had this experience when you were young, which was clearly a positive experience for you as a newcomer getting involved in politics, both academic and also the practical side. But you talk about these barriers. So at some point you decided you were going to do something about that. You created Glocal. And maybe you can talk a little bit about what that is and what you're hoping that does for young people.
Thank you. When we talk to stakeholders, sometimes when we create programs, we imagine we can bring youth from point A to point B, but the reality is youth are everywhere. Not everybody at the same level, even from the same city, of similar ethnic background, they still have very different barriers. So Glocal really trying to look at the realities, and we ask what will prevent us from serving, say, 7 million Canadian youth. What is the scalability? We identify there's some infrastructure missing here. So we talk about the last mile delivery of civic knowledge, right? Having the information on the website doesn't mean the citizens actually being able to get the information, digest the information, and use it in the correct way. Because of that last mile infrastructure missing, that caused a lot of space for misinformation and disinformation. So we're thinking about what can we do. And personally, I feel also a bit sometimes emotional when I think about hundreds of years ago when Chinese real world workers come to Canada to build the physical infrastructure. And Anita, I think you also agree that Canada's got talent.
Yes.
There's so many, and you're fascinated just even by your constituents. They bring in very different life experience, academic expertise, as well as their worldviews. So I think Glocal, our goal is not me being the hero, produce everything. Actually, we're seeing ourselves as construction workers, as a facilitator that can mobilize our existing human talents and resources in this crowd effort in building this last mile delivery of civic information and participation to the end user, in our case is the citizens.
I love that analogy of the last mile because as politicians we also, how do we reach people, and particularly young people, and they say go where they are, but sometimes that piece is a little bit difficult even for us. So the work that you're doing, tangibly, you have literally brought young people into Parliament. And I remember, meeting some of these young people, seeing their projects, and they're their projects. They, it's very, very original, unique. You've made that space for them. But what is it that you actually do? Like, what does Glocal do? Can you give us some tangible examples and maybe a success story of something that you saw that inspired you?
Absolutely. So first of all, a lot of people say young people are has this apathy towards politics, but we believe usually it's a psychological kind of overloaded. Sometimes they feel a lot of jargon, so we make it very flexible, modularized, and we call it high impact but relatively easy to entry kind of type of micro volunteering task. Today,
micro volunteering.
Yeah, today
okay.
I create a weekly task of the week. We call it Explore, this recognition, certificate program that Prime Minister's office is offering. A lot of youth are not aware that they can request that.
Oh.
Right, and the other weeks we're asking youth to visit Statistics Canada's website because they're recruiting a lot of enumerators on the field.
Census.
Yes, census. Yeah. So we gather a lot of data analysts actually, and they're passionate about doing civic work, and they're not aware of those opportunities. So this is one example. For a lot of urban youth, they have lots of competing priorities. For youth from the northern regions, we also create, for example, growing vegetables in the northern classrooms.
Hey.
Oh, they love it. And a lot of the microgreens will be serving the school cafeteria, and sometimes can invite community members to have a community feast together. We try to reimagine what does community service look like in Canada. And we also want to target disabled, communities, youth. We create online work placements opportunities for them that they can do it from home in an environment that they like and feel comfortable.
And so, what is an example? I mean, what would a young person, give me an example of something that they're producing or doing, or even the way that you're trying to connect them with people like me. What exactly are some of them doing?
So that's why we say we listen to them. We don't tell them what to do.
Good.
We call it co-design. So they can propose their project. Some youth say they're not too sure, so we offer mentorship to help them brainstorm ideas that is important for them, their family, their communities. So we ended up not really limits. So we have more traditional community service type of volunteer work, but also very modern type of non-traditional, such as create a podcast, create drone projects, documentary, and we even create a gamified tool for people to access government information.
Excellent. So you're making it accessible. You're making it
and
easy.
Make it fun and relevant and
fun
meaningful.
And relevant. There
meaningful.
You go. And what do you think some of the outcomes are?
I think right now the outcomes is for youth, they feel like everybody is no longer from A to B, but they feel like all from where they are towards the same goal of digital literacy, democratic literacy, and we call it combine 4-in-1. We learn, build skills, serve, and belong.
I like that.
So that kind of, it sounds like a one project. So it's a project-based volunteer. Yeah. We make sure that they walk out of this, they graduate out of these programs with something they feel very proud, and something that they can stay with, with a civic legacy. So they all feel very proud.
Do you wish you'd had something like this when you were young?
I think this society is changing. I really appreciate what we had. I won't say I wish to have it, but I feel like this is really adapt to the changing social realities.
Yeah. And you focus on newcomers, but as you said, you focus on others that might face more barriers, extra barriers. Why do you think that is?
Juanita, why your work is very important, because you give the visibility and voice back to people. I think we have seen some challenges. We have heard youth, they say newcomer professionals, they apply 500 jobs with even not an opportunity to be rejected. So sometimes we help them to create a portfolio that they actually ended up getting a job and they get Canadian experience. So we appreciate, a lot of effort. You're doing a lot of, social innovation at the same time, because not all your community, your constituents can attend in-person town hall. Sometimes we may not even feel safe nowadays to do so. So you are trying to be creative in creating that space, and that really matters.
And you're thinking about the coffee hour and the others, but even this podcast is,
yes.
I've often said, as an MP, I don't just have a voice, I have a megaphone. And the great thing about a megaphone is I can give it to someone else. And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to do as a politician, but you're doing your part by bringing the young people in so that they can actually find those entry points. I think really we need both. So you've spent now more than 20 years either engaging in democracy or helping others to engage in democracy. So I'm just going to ask you the question, what does democracy mean to you, Faye?
Well, democracy, as I mentioned, is about putting people at the center of who gets what, when, and how. That's why sometimes I think giving the visibility and voice back to people is the most essential work. But, I don't think in a lot of situations that might necessarily be doing enough given the changing, challenges. But I appreciate, legislator like yourself to make efforts. Sometimes it could be feeling lonely. Sometimes it's a lot of investment of time, effort. Sometimes could be emotionally draining. But we really appreciate the fact that you continue, working on this too.
And this is a theme that I've seen, is that even though sometimes it can be frustrating, even though doors close, a lot of the people I've spoken to now on the podcast talk about perseverance and continuing to try. Because when those conversations happen, it is magical. And you've helped to make those conversations happen. If you could talk a little bit about the project that you had where you bring a group of youth into a room and you bring a group of politicians, and you had some sort of checklist, and the youth had to find scavenger hunt of different politicians. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, first of all, participation, we want to make it fun, as I say, relevant and also meaningful in the sense that help their academic, career, and social, networking. So that's how we design our programs and make it easier. We believe it was just the entry point, so we call it widen the on-ramps. So everybody feel it's for them and they are able to do it. So this works significantly, particularly for, as I mentioned, young Canadians with youth from remote region, from newcomers whose first language is not English or French. For them, it feels very intimidating. Thanks to the digital technologies, now our website, thanks to Google Translation, thanks to virtual meeting opportunities, we're able to bridge a lot of the major gaps in the past. And we also want to make it, we call it all you can volunteer, all you can serve. Yeah. So make it so anytime, anywhere, we also design it for overseas Canadians. They have been disconnected, right, with their constituents.
Of course, yeah.
So they have the opportunity to know what Anita's, writing is happening, what's going on. They can continue to serve the community from overseas. So these are some little effort. We see ourselves as construction workers. We mobilize youth as the key because the youth community intersect with all the rest of the communities. So we make it like if you one day come to Glocal, you feel like entering a massive construction site. We're building different little projects, and depending on availability, sometimes we build more and faster when we have the resources, and sometimes we'll just leave it, but we'll always be able to revive them.
And why Glocal? The name Glocal, where did that come from?
Well, I think first of all, I think local engagement is getting more and more important. I think a lot of people may not have the, we grab a lot of attention back to, for example, municipal governance, how city, right, politics is important. And at the same time, we believe Canadians, we have all the cultural roots, multiculturalism, roots around the globe. We could strengthen our global understanding to help resolve a lot of domestic challenges.
Yeah. Global and local. Glocal.
Yes.
Wonderful. So for a young person who's watching right now, who is listening to you and saying, I might want to try this. This is interesting, but they don't know how to start. What would you suggest to them?
Well, first of all, go to Glocal website. We have extended office hour, 12 hours per day during weekdays, and we also have hours during the weekends in case that everything we do, and we invite you to be part of the building process. So you're not a trainee. Here, you are co-workers, co-construction workers. And if you're not sure what to do, always join our info session office hour. We're here to listen to you and design something that is meaningful to you.
And this is exactly what I try to do as an MP, is bring young people, bring voices in, make it easier, meet people where they are. And I just love that you're doing it because you're making my job easier. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for facilitating conversations, because this is Democracy in Conversation.
Thank you.